it. And it's obvious in hindsight. He came along and told millions of people every crazy email you've ever forwarded was true. And that, at least in part, is why he will be our next president. And to their credit, some Republican lawmakers were calling him out on this during the campaign.
I'm going to tell you what I really think of Donald Trump. This man is a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies.
He was right. He was just right. But before you think Republicans might now stand up to Trump, I will remind you that by the end of the campaign, Ted Cruz, like many others, not only said he'd vote for Trump, but was doing this.
Hi, this is Ted Cruz calling. I was calling to encourage you to come out and vote on Election Day.
Wow, that is hard to watch. But let's break that fear down, because while it is true that children do receive more shots than they used to, the number of antigens in those shots, or the substances that induce the immune response, has greatly decreased. And it's a drop in the ocean compared to the thousands of foreign antigens a child usually encounters every day. Just watch a child for 5 minutes and see if they don't eat their friends' boogers, put their entire mouth over the water fountain, or try and kiss a raccoon they just found in a dumpster while playing hide and seek. My point is, children are fucking disgusting. And you in France love nothing more than acting like you are better than Britain and America. Well, now is your chance to prove that. Because we made populist nativist choices with Brexit and Trump. And to be honest, it's not working out so great for us so far. And now you have a populist nativist choice of your own. And just imagine how superior you can feel if you don't make the same mistake that we did. And I really want to convince you more, but I know you don't like big, gaudy gestures. So allow me to convince you in the elegant, restrained manner that you prefer. Please, please. That loop gets much more dangerous when you're not talking about something as silly as gerbils. Trump validated his supporters' beliefs about voter fraud, and in turn, they validated his. Because even when he was directly confronted with the lack of evidence, this is how he responded.
You know what's important? Millions of people agree with me when I say that. If you would have looked on one of the other networks and all of the people that were calling in, they're saying, we agree with Mr. Trump, we agree. They're very smart people.
Right, but just because they believe you and you believe them doesn't make it true. This isn't like Peter Pan, where believing in fairies will keep Tinkerbell alive. This isn't a magic thing, Peter. She has Lou Gehrig's disease. And maybe instead of clapping, you should have done the ice bucket challenge, then she'd still be alive. I'm sorry, Peter, but she's dying. Tinkerbell's dying. But the mandate keeps younger, healthier people in the system, which is crucial to lower the cost for everyone else and to keep in popular provisions like, among other things, not punishing fat babies. The Republican solution is to make it really painful for you to get insurance again if you drop it at any point for any reason. They use the positive-sounding term continuous coverage incentive. But it has to involve some kind of penalty, maybe a higher premium or even denial of coverage. And they are not keen to talk about details there. Remember the placeholder from earlier? That was in place of an explanation of the continuous coverage incentive. Basically, this is a subject so toxic, they'd rather just go abruptly silent, much like when you're a white person singing karaoke and you realise, uh-oh, we have an N-word coming up. So if you're thinking, well, hold on, eventually reality will set in, because if elected, Trump would actually have to deal with facts. Well, I'm not so sure about that. Just this week, The Times reported that not only was John Kasich asked if he had any interest in the vice presidency by the Trump campaign, he was offered quite a lot more.
Donald Trump Jr. even called one of John Kasich's top aides and said that if he wanted the job, he could even be in charge of foreign and domestic policy, which, of course, is kind of everything.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing that is not foreign policy or domestic policy is space policy, which leads me to believe Donald Trump's entire goal is to eventually own the moon. So we all care about lead in Flint now, which is great. Unfortunately, the problem is not just in Flint. A USA Today network report found lead contamination in almost 2,000 additional water systems spanning all 50 states. And we can't just act like it's not there, the way we all pretend that the public swimming pool is not 3% child urine. And that's generous, by the way. And Now, Wall Street loved those tax breaks, as well as the fact that thanks to yet another legal quirk that they themselves lobbied for, they could stash tons of bonds in funds without putting Puerto Rico in the name. You might even own Puerto Rican bonds and not even know it. Oppenheimer's Maryland Municipal Fund, for instance, is made up of 50.4% Puerto Rico bonds, which is insane, because if you are more than half something, that is what you should be called. Even Taco Bell makes sure their ground beef is less than 50% squirrel lips. And that's because, as we all know, the rest is a combination of raccoon dicks and weasel knees.
Turns out if you're pregnant, eating 30 grams a day of chocolate, that's about 2/3 of a chocolate bar, not the whole chocolate bar, could improve blood flow to the placenta and benefit the growth and development of your baby, especially in women at risk for preeclampsia or high blood pressure in pregnancy.
Except that's not what the study said. It's like a game of telephone. The substance gets distorted at every step. And I can only imagine how someone who watched that segment must have described it the next day. Oh, the news said our baby is made of chocolate and it's okay if I eat it, but only 2/3. And if you're thinking, well, hold on, wait a minute. I can find my location on my cell phone. Well, you're not alone. Dispatchers wonder the same thing.
I can check in on Facebook and it'll tell you exactly what building I'm in. I can be at the hockey game and it tells me I'm at First Niagara Center checking in on Facebook. But when you call 911, we don't get that accurate location information. So the technology's out there, it's just not getting to us at this point.
But that's a good point, because even the Domino's app can tell where you are, and they've barely mastered the technology to make a palatable pizza. So look, this patchwork of convoluted systems would be annoying enough, but each party also has its own way of potentially putting its thumb on the scale. For Democrats, it's superdelegates.
About 15% of the total delegates to this summer's Democratic convention are unpledged. These are elected officials, former presidents, and assorted party bigwigs called superdelegates. They can vote for whichever candidate they want, regardless of who won in their state or district.
OK, so the delegates are super in the way the kids on My Super Sweet 16 are super. They are party-obsessed, widely resented, and untethered from all responsibility. Now, that is the best-case scenario, and many special districts are like that, chugging along just fine with no major problems. But some, like the Isaacson Municipal Utility District in Texas, are not. Because an audit recently discovered $70,000 in losses and that the district billed residents for water with a disturbing consistency. Now, no charges have been filed there, but that level of consistency is weird. The only time the exact same amount of water should appear in a document year after year is in Shamu's rider. Yeah, Shamu gets 13.7 million gallons of water in his tank at all times, and not a drop less. He's a fucking artist. I'm obviously kidding. You can keep him in a wading pool if you want, and if you want to fuck his blowhole, that'll be an extra 20. The point is, thanks for visiting SeaWorld. Our main topic tonight concerns debt. It's the reason Nicolas Cage has made so many great choices in recent years. And presumably, it's the fuel he uses to power performances like this one from his recent movie, The Trust.
Open it! 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 Open it!
Holy shit! He delivered that line like a child on PCP opening birthday presents, which he clearly hopes are full of more PCP. Now, American households collectively owe over $12 trillion in debt. And right now, $436 billion of that debt is seriously delinquent, meaning it's 90 or more days past due. And it is not good when anything is that late. If your baby were 3 months overdue, you'd effectively just be giving birth to a floppy toddler. And look, his fingers seem fine. But the very fact he's so sensitive about them is absolutely hilarious. As is the fact that those notes were apparently written in gold Sharpie, which is so quintessentially Donald Trump. Something that gives the passing appearance of wealth, but is actually just a cheap tool. Now, Trump's signature tough talk, his signature tough talk often involves lawsuits. He loves to threaten to sue people, like he did with Rosie O'Donnell.
She said I was bankrupt. I never went bankrupt, so probably I'll sue her because it would be fun. I'd like to take some money out of her fat ass pockets.
Well, look, of course he needs to take Rosie O'Donnell to court to take money out of her pockets because his tiny, tiny fingers are too short to reach into her wallet. But compound interest works both ways, meaning while your money adds up, your fees can really add up too.
Assume you're invested in a fund that is earning a gross annual return of 7%. They charge you a 2% annual fee. Over 50 years, the difference between your net of 5%, the red line, and what you would have made without fees, the green line, is staggering. You've lost almost 2/3 of what you would have had.
2/3 of what you would have had is gone. So think of fees like termites. They're tiny, they're barely noticeable, and they can eat away your fucking future. The truth here is, voter impersonation fraud is incredibly rare. One researcher who tracked it closely found that from 2000 to 2014, there were 31 possible incidents in the entire country, out of over 1 billion ballots cast. Voter fraud is a problem the way that deadly knife play from crabs is a problem. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. There are cases where it has happened, but let's not overreact to one stabby crab. But despite rigorous testing, athletes are clearly slipping through the cracks for a number of reasons. For a start, there are multiple tests and none of them can detect the full range of drugs an athlete might be on, from anabolic steroids to EPO to human growth hormone to the most powerful drug of all, love. And as for New Orleans, their public defender's office has actually put up a crowdfunding page to help make up their budget shortfall. And it's currently only raised 19% of its goal. And look, nobody should be in jail because a Kickstarter didn't meet its goal. If anything, some people should be in jail because a Kickstarter did meet its goal, like this one for an actual giant inflatable Lionel Richie head. You two gentlemen should be locked up all night long. All night, all night, all night long. All night, all night. Hey, Jumba Jumba. Hey, Jumba Jumba. And look, if you are surprised by this, don't worry, you're not alone. A 2013 poll showed that nearly 70% of people thought it was illegal under federal law for someone to be fired for being gay. People believe it because it feels like it should be true. It's optimistic, but wrong. Like thinking vertical stripes are flattering, or making your first condom purchase magnums. Optimistic, but statistically wrong. And if you think that this sounds bad, just wait until you see how it looks. Check out this waste dump in California's Salinas Valley.
We got a whole load, pretty much, of loose organic lettuce. You know, we've got spinach towards the back. Looks like it's perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. We got some kale here. We got broccoli in the back as well. You have plenty of produce to make a salad here.
Oh, not just a salad. You could make a significantly better salad than the salads they actually sell at McDonald's, which look like the trimmings in Ronald McDonald's lawnmower mixed with grimace ejaculate. Documents later revealed that despite denying they made a profit, the Marlins had generated nearly $50 million over the previous 2 years. And listen, pretending you're poor is wrong. It wasn't okay when Mary-Kate Olsen went through her hobo phase, and it's not okay now. And we haven't even mentioned the ultimate bargaining chip that teams like to use, threatening to leave. Right now, the Oakland Raiders, the St. Louis Rams, and the San Diego Chargers are all threatening to move to Los Angeles unless they get new stadiums. In fact, over the past 2 decades, nearly half the NFL has been subject to speculation about a move to LA. It's such a cliche that in the current Madden video game, if you want a new stadium, a good way to do that is to relocate the team. And the game even tells you the easiest choice financially is, guess where? Los Angeles. And if you're a Chargers fan, that must be pretty infuriating. Oh, come on. Even my make-believe escapist entertainment is trying to move my fucking team to LA. Transgender, pretty much any interaction with bureaucracy can be humiliatingly difficult. Just take what happened to 2 transgender women when they went to the DMV in West Virginia.
Both women were asked to remove all their jewelry, makeup, and wigs before the DMV would photograph them.
They're saying that I need to fulfill a certain look that they are designating means male, and that I'm, hiding who I am, which I'm absolutely not.
Both women say they were also referred to as it.
Words can't explain the humiliation I felt that day. That was the worst thing in 52 years of my life I have ever felt.
Listen, I'm not saying anyone has a good DMV experience, but that is the worst I have ever heard. And for the record, you get to pick virtually everything else on your driver's licence. They ask you your weight. They don't weigh you like a prize hog. Plus, the thing is, when Amanda Hess went to the police, she quickly discovered how ill-equipped they can be to deal with this sort of thing.
In my home state of California, it's a crime to threaten bodily harm against another person. When I received my most sort of recent bout of threats, said the police officer who came to my door didn't even understand what Twitter was, had no idea how to investigate such a crime, and I'm not even sure knew that it was criminal. So it's hard to know what to do when you're put in that situation.
That's a problem, because the police cannot investigate a crime if they genuinely don't understand the medium in which it happened. If someone tried to drown you, you don't want the police saying, I get the murder attempt, but what's this water thing you keep bringing up? Is it like air, but a bit more choky? Is that what it is? And it doesn't stop there. The report also cites the tragic case of Gul Rahman, a completely innocent man picked up in a case of mistaken identity who was shackled to the wall of his cell and later found dead, likely from hypothermia. And at this point, we could all probably do with hearing Helen Mirren reading something a little more pleasant. Maybe some Beatrix Potter.
Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries.
Oh, thank you, Helen. That's so much nicer. Please, tell me more about the bunnies.
But while Flopsy, Mopsy and Cottontail were on their way to pick blackberries, Peter was chained to a wall in Farmer McGregor's basement. He'd been badly beaten, and a tray of carrots and raisins was pureed and rectally infused.
Helen Mirren, I'm going to say what everyone has thought about you for years. You're a monster. But our indifference to pennies doesn't stop there. In a 2002 Gallup poll, 2% of Americans admitted to regularly throwing pennies in the garbage, which means the US Mint is spending millions to make garbage. And that's not their job. That's M. Night Shyamalan's job. And when we're not throwing pennies in the garbage, we're doing even worse things with them, as attested to by a Reddit thread titled, I put a penny in my butt and now I can't get it out. And before you ask, apparently the reason they did it was, and I quote, I wanted to know what it would feel like to put a cold penny up my butt. I put it in the fridge for like 2 to 3 hours. First, little known fact, that's actually how Daniel Day-Lewis prepared to play Abraham Lincoln. And incidentally, and this is also true, that penny is currently in your pocket. But it's a little weird to see professional sports in cahoots with these sites because most leagues have generally been opposed to gambling. Unlicensed gambling is illegal in most states, and these sites do look a lot like gambling. And don't just take that from me. Take it from Hall of Fame quarterback Joe Namath.
Do you feel like it's gambling? Is that what you do when you play fantasy sports?
Do they have to pay anything to play?
I think you have to pay.
And do they win something?
They do.
It's gambling.
Okay. So, Joe Namath, a man so lacking in discernment, he wore this to the Super Bowl. Even he can see that this is gambling. And he's not alone. Just last month, the Gaming Control Board of Nevada ruled it was gambling, essentially arguing if people are going to lose all their money pressing buttons on a screen, that screen better have Sex and the City characters on it.
Geraldine Miller signed the ban after her son robbed a bodega at 16.
Had I known what I know today, I would have never signed that paper.
Miller herself now faces eviction after her son was caught helping her with groceries after she became ill. She has to go to her brother's apartment to see her son.
Nitra want me to throw my son away. I can't.
Look, we all want people who've committed crimes to learn their lesson, but never help your sick mother with groceries. Sounds more like the kind of lesson you'd learn from a shitty Boy Scout leader. Hey, kids, never help your sick mother with groceries, always know where the exits are in a dogfight, and never pay a stripper up front. Scouts dismissed. Let me explain. The Supreme Court struck down the part of the law which enabled the government to force states to expand Medicaid, which meant states could choose to reject the expansion, even though that would be an odd decision. Under the law, the federal government would pay 100% of the costs for the first 3 years, eventually decreasing to 90%. And I can't think of anything I would not buy if I only had to pay 10% of the price. Fred Claus on DVD? I mean, no thank you, but yes, I'll take it. Vince Vaughn is always good for 49 cents worth of yucks, in which he explains his party trick of pretending to fall down a flight of stairs.
Let me show you how it normally works. I put a person here, and I'm passing, so it's like, hey, how are you?
What? Look. No one is saying that is behaviour worthy of a head of state, but you cannot deny that it is somewhat satisfying to watch a soul-patched man named Justin with a French accent just fall down some stairs. There's something there that's good about it. And given all of this, perhaps it shouldn't be surprising when tragedy strikes, as it did 4 years ago at a well owned by a company called Oasis Petroleum.
Some tragic news from western North Dakota. 1 man is killed and 3 are injured in an oil well explosion. A Wisconsin man died at the scene. 3 other men were transported to the Wilson Hospital to be treated for severe burns.
Now, that is the sort of local news story that you watch, feel briefly sad about, and then forget as soon as they get to their final story about a squirrel who can play ping pong. And some states have been involved in something called greyhound therapy. And unfortunately, that does not mean getting to hug a trembling dog who's 98% bone and gristle. It's an even worse kind of greyhound, the kind with 4 wheels and a broken toilet.
This is Rawson Neal, the only state-run psychiatric hospital in southern Nevada. Rawson Neal has been accused of greyhound therapy, a practice critics call unthinkable, discharging seriously ill patients too soon, then supplying them with a one-way bus ticket out of town.
I'm sorry, but you cannot just put people you'd rather not see on a bus to another city. If you could, that's how every breakup would end. Look, Greta, it's not you, it's me, but on the other hand, I think you're going to really enjoy your new life in Syracuse. And that mayor is no outlier. Hungary has been responsible for some of the ugliest mistreatment of refugees in Europe.
Disturbing cell phone video appears to show migrants at the main refugee camp here being fed like a herd of caged animals in a holding pen.
It's a shocking video that has garnered attention from around the world. As waves of desperate migrants sprint from a holding camp in Hungary, a camerawoman appears to trip a man running with his child in his arms. The woman also kicks other migrants as they run, including a young girl. Now the camerawoman is out of a job.
Oh, I'm sorry, she lost her job? That's absolutely terrible. But don't worry, I'm sure she can find a new one on actualmonster.com. To be fair, she later apologised, saying, "I'm not a heartless, racist, children-kicking camerawoman." Which I can only presume means she's a loving, accepting children-kicking camerawoman, because the children-kicking part is not really up